Welcome to the Bunge, Decatur, Indiana, Site-Specific Safety Orientation for 2025. The Decatur, Indiana location is one of the largest Bunge sites, not only by the size of our campus, but also because of the scope of our operations. Our operations include grain receiving and merchandising of wheat and soybeans, soybean oil extraction, animal feeds production, refining, processing and packaging of lecithin and oils for end users in numerous areas of food manufacturing. With several different operations areas, comes a wide variety of risk, so please be aware that this is why we have required such detailed orientation. Bunge's new view is fundamentally shifted away from a zero-incident mindset and moved to the adoption of principles around human and organizational performance. This shift helps us better focus on high-potential exposures, where the risk has life-ending or life-altering risk. This ensures high-risk work is accomplished only with critical controls in place to keep us going home safe, every single day. Here at Bunge, safety is a value. Nothing is so urgent that it can't be done safely. This is not only a statement but something I'd ask you to personally consider in every decision you make. Yes, there will be frustrations and delays as we review work for pre-job hazard analyses, permits, or sort out applicable standards and controls, but at the end of the day, we ask you share any questions or concerns to ensure all risks are managed effectively. At Bunge, stop work authority may be exercised by anyone at any time if there are questions about the risk of a given activity, behavior, or condition. The concern and risk must be effectively understood and managed prior to resuming work. If there is not alignment on how to proceed, please pull in a member of the Bunge management team for assistance. Learning is important so we can prevent incidents. Beyond injuries, we ask that near-miss events or potentially hazardous conditions or behaviors observed are shared with Bunge leadership. This is why we emphasize so much focus in planning safe work. At the end of the day, we can't fix problems or learn from events we don't know about. If at any time you need assistance or questions arise, please stop and escalate any concern. As a contractor for Bunge, there are several programs, forms and requirements within to be aware of. These are critical to understand, so work can be planned to be accomplished safely, and prevent job stops and impactful changes after startup. Please be sure that these programs, forms, and requirements within are fully understood. Reach out to your Bunge project or department manager for these as you begin. Here is a workflow illustration showing new planning requirement in red. Please be aware that these pre-job safety conferences should be documenting the planning you are already doing, and although it may be a different way to do it, we are working to streamline a process to ensure more effective planning around high-potential exposure work prior to start. Although not required until just before work begins, it is highly encouraged to ensure alignment around safety controls and requirements prior to quoting and purchase order issuance. This alignment prevents later delays and costs if the work was not initially planned consistent with Bunge standards. The methods for doing work at elevated heights is a common example where initial plans, quotes and methods have led to stops, delays and extra cost to use scaffold or rent lifts were not originally planned, but to reduce risk to acceptable levels. Any exception to our standards requires additional safe work plan development and approval prior to starting work. This can take some time and is another reason to emphasize why planning is so important. For those of you who may be planning work and coordinating projects, here is the pre-job safety conference checklist discussed on the last slide. As you can see, it is really an outline of planning, mobilization, work risk management that we are likely already discussing. Please be sure to use this to formalize alignment and pull in safety department personnel where there are any questions related to standards and management of work risk. Although this was omitted from the workflow slide already shown, there are some Bunge-owned items that can be provided as needed, but others where we must require a signed indemnity agreement prior to use. This slide illustrates what items are covered and not covered. Please be aware this takes some time as it must be signed by both your company and Bunge. However, the Bunge approvals are beyond the plant level, so please plan ahead with your Bunge project lead. When you work on, around, or with exposures that can be of high risk or high potential consequence if not managed correctly, we need you to include a Bunge person in the planning and review of your pre-job hazard assessment. This helps us ensure site-specific hazards are identified, and keeps us all aligned and protected, via the implementation of our critical controls. Much of this work typically involves permits, but the permit alone is not enough. Although the area supervisors can review these while doing the permit reviews, please ensure we are not only relying on the permits, and still doing these pre-job hazard analyses with some help or review. Please sign in at the guard shack and departments so we can account for you in the event of an emergency. We have smoke huts in each department. This is the only area for tobacco and personal lighter use, outside of vehicles. Please be sure to keep slip, trip, fall, and food quality risk minimized, and general aesthetics of the site in good condition, by cleaning up after yourselves as materials or wastes are generated. Please be sure your employees are trained and qualified to do tasks expected of them. Bunge expects anyone not yet qualified and in training be with another, so work is supervised and still effectively safe. We reserve the right to request individual training records at any time. Please be sure to use dedicated contractor parking or staging areas only, and work with Bunge management where changes or projects warrant other needs. Everyone must obey all posted signage and warning lights to ensure their safety, and our ability to account for them in the event of an emergency. Classified areas, whether for combustible dust or flammable and combustible chemicals, must be respected and electronics not taken into the area, unless rated and/or permitted, after verification with Bunge management. This includes 3D scanners, phones, watches, and any other electronic instrumentation. Rated radios are available upon request from Bunge management in the Guard, where high-risk activity drives a need to ensure communications are maintained in any of these rated areas. Be sure to discuss these needs with your Bunge project lead, so any needs are captured ahead of the work. Lastly, please be advised that Bunge has widely expanded its use of video surveillance both indoors and outdoors. While this is primarily for deterring security incidents and assisting in quality investigations, it may be used for any investigation, pending reasonable cause. This slide outlines the minimum personal protective equipment, or PPE, required while at Decatur, Indiana Bunge operational areas. One exception to hard hats is our packaging department, unless your work presents any construction or related risk to overhead or head knocker risk. Safety boots with either steel toe or composite toe protection are required in all areas of the plant. All clothing garments must either be 100% natural fiber like cotton, or may be flame-resistant material. Anyone doing work here as a contractor must wear long pants, and shirts must have sleeves. Classified areas and activities, like electrical switch throwing, will additionally require long sleeves and arc-rated flame-resistant outerwear. Since there are almost no locations to totally be isolated from mobile equipment exposure between forklift, ranger, truck or rail traffic, all contractors are required to wear high-visibility vest or outerwear. The first HPE, and one of the leading causes of death in the U.S., is work at height. Work at height is considered any work surface over 4 feet. These types of scenarios can include working from a ladder above 4 feet, or working on a ladder within 6 feet of a handrail, or on an elevated location. Common exposures include working while on ladders, scaffolding, the top of trucks or trailers, or working near a leading edge, such as on a roof, or where flooring has been removed. Fall prevention or fall protection is always required when working above 4 feet. Exceptions only exist for scaffold ladders, and fixed ladders up to 10 feet in height, and portable A-frame ladders, where there is a platform, and railing is an integrated part of the ladder. Beyond simply using fall protection for cases described in the last slide, there are many exposures that require a permit to be completed, along with the pre-job hazard analysis, prior to starting work. These cases are listed here. Please review carefully. Many of these require the permit to ensure appropriate use of fall protection, as improper use can still be fatal or debilitating. This is to ensure fall clearance, swing fall, and rescue plans have been properly considered and developed. This slide was additionally created to illustrate the scope of the work at height permits. You are encouraged to request clarification if there are any questions about the applicability of this permit. Only those competent in scaffolding building, installation and inspection may bring scaffolding on site and use it. Scaffolding must be provided by the contractor, if necessary, in completing the job. Bunge has preferred scaffolding vendors. Contact your project coordinator for those vendors' contacts if you need scaffolding. Daily pre-use inspection is required by a competent person before the scaffold can be used. Do not use scaffolding that does not have a green or yellow inspection tag. Be sure to read tags. Green tagged scaffolds may still require the use of fall protection. Before working on any equipment, it must be properly locked out. Most commonly referred to as lockout tagout, Bunge identifies this as verify, lock, tag, and try, or VLTT. Before work on the equipment starts, all personnel that will be working on it must verify that the correct equipment is being shut down and locked out, with the help of Bunge. Once this is verified, all affected employees in the area must be notified that the equipment will be shut down and locked out. Bunge employees will be responsible for shutting down the equipment, following detailed shutdown procedures. Once equipment has been completely shut down, all sources of energy, such as electrical disconnects or valves, must be locked out and tagged by all personnel that will be working on the equipment. Tags shall identify the person by name and the contractor company. All residual energy must be relieved, and attempt to start the equipment to verify it will not start back up. Once the work is completed and the equipment is properly put back together, all affected personnel shall be notified, and then locks and tags may be removed, prior to putting the equipment back into service. At Bunge, there are many types of mobile equipment, including forklifts, semi-trucks, tractors, utility vehicles, skid steers, payloaders, and train engines to name a few. Critical controls are those we most heavily rely upon to prevent pedestrian exposure to moving mobile equipment. Specific to rail safety, please, when near railroad tracks, expect movement at any time, and keep clear unless authorized to be near the rail equipment or tracks. A unique control to Decatur, Indiana is that we utilize the Blue Flag permit process and positive protection when any work is conducted within 12 feet of the track center line. You will need to see the department leadership for the Blue Flag permit to ensure our rail operators know of the work going on, but will also assist you in correctly applying positive protection. More rail information is on the next slide. Another Bunge HP involves hoisted loads. Hoisted loads are any type of material, parts, or equipment that are lifted off the ground with cranes, hoists, mobile equipment, or chain falls. Whenever lifting is involved, proper barricading and protections are required. This includes barricading of horizontal and vertical drop zones, areas where the load and lifting device could potentially fall if there is mechanical or operational error. Additionally, when people are in hoisting areas where physical barricades must be removed, a personal fall arrest system is required by each person in the area before the barricades are removed. Personnel that are authorized to be in hoisting areas to perform work must always take proper precaution to never be under a load. The use of taglines that are long enough to maintain a safe position out of the vertical drop zone is required. Depending on the type of lift, a critical lift permit may need to be used. Scenarios for the permit would include exceeding 75% of a crane's lifting capacity, high-value loads, lifting of personnel in a man basket, using 2 cranes, lifting over hazardous material, and some additional parameters. Verify before conducting a lift with a crane, if a permit will be required. In the last year, Bunge has now added a permit to ensure our review of all mobile crane lifts. Please be sure no lifts occur until the plan and conditions have been reviewed. While we are not experts in cranes and rigging, we do still want to ensure certain controls and involvement of those involved, including those who do know it best as the certified crane operator, rigger, and exclusion zones are effectively implemented prior to any lift. Overhead work, material handling, and hoisting activities are common exposures where danger tape and tags are utilized to warn of hazards and prevent access. Be careful as there are many other reasons for use, and always check tags to be sure you understand the hazards and are authorized to enter prior to passing tape. In some cases, tape alone is not good enough. Leading edge exposures must use substantial protection to restrict access, and where hoisting or working overhead, these areas must now be actively monitored. This means a dedicated watch, not someone involved in the task at hand, but able to commit their attention to the area, solely for restricting access. There are several requirements that must be met prior to any confined space work. These have been outlined above. Please review and ensure these are understood. This is an area where planning is imperative to ensuring work can occur as planned. Many times, this work is stopped due to a lack of effective rescue planning. Please be sure the Bunge project leads and safety are involved prior to the work to minimize this risk. Excavations must also be planned to ensure drawings and utility locates have been completed ahead of the excavation activity. This is truly any disturbance to the ground, and there are several requirements to trigger additional confined space and rescue requirements. Please be sure to coordinate a good plan prior to work starting. Due to our process, Bunge utilizes several chemicals that can be hazardous if not handled properly, which makes this another Bunge high potential exposure. Hazardous chemicals come in various quantities in containers, including drums and bulk tanker trucks. These chemicals require special handling and additional PPE. Verify the requirements for both from your Bunge contact. Additional information for each chemical on site can be found on its Chemical Safety Data Sheet, or SDS. Bunge utilizes a third party to maintain and update all of our SDSs, which is called MSDS Online, now Velocity EHS. You can search for any SDS on their website, or call their number, which is listed here, and also posted in several areas of the plant. Any SDS can be emailed or faxed upon request. To control what we introduce to employees in our processes, no chemicals may be brought onto the site, unless approved by Bunge, regardless of the quantity. If you are exposed to a chemical, or you believe you were exposed to a chemical, find the nearest safety shower and eye wash unit and flush the affected area for at least 15 minutes. Seek medical treatment after that if needed, and be sure to report the incident to Bunge as soon as reasonably possible. Process Safety Management, or PSM, is a regulation that is governed by OSHA, and it focuses on the systemic management of highly hazardous processes. The goal is to prevent or minimize the consequences of releasing hazardous chemicals inside of a facility or into the environment surrounding the facility. The PSM covered process for Decatur is the extraction process, due to the quantity of hexane used. Additionally, the packaging department utilizes anhydrous ammonia for warehouse and product cooling, and the edible oil department uses hydrogen for batch processing of oil. Employees and contractors that perform work in the extraction, packaging, or edible oil departments must be made aware of the potential hazards and special precautions that are required. These process hazards and safety requirements will be outlined in the following material. Hexane is present in the extraction department. Hot work is prohibited unless system is steam purged and approved by Bunge supervisors. Only brass or non-sparking tools can be used when opening any solvent-containing lines or equipment. Only Class 1, Division 1 approved electronic devices are allowed. Scaffolding must be built with non-combustible materials. No plastic sample buckets are allowed, and plastic tools must have management approval due to static electricity risk. Hexane is an extremely flammable gas and liquid. Its vapors are heavier than air, or rather, it sinks. Its liquids float on top of water and can look like an oil sheen. The extraction process area must be steam purged prior to hot work. There are several ways a person could be exposed to health hazards associated with hexane. Vapor inhalation can cause short-term narcotic-like effects, like drowsiness and blurred vision. If exposed to hexane vapors, seek fresh air immediately. A large concentration of vapor, or prolonged exposure, may require medical treatment. Ingesting hexane or other solvents could lead to it entering into the respiratory system, which would be considered a medical emergency. Professional medical help should be called immediately. If hexane has contact to the skin or eyes, it could lead to a minor rash or severe irritation, and should be flushed with water for at least 15 minutes. The SDS will provide more detailed information and, if working around hexane, consult Bunge management to ensure the proper PPE is being used. In order to enter into the extraction process area, you must undergo this orientation, as well as sign in and receive permission for entry from the extraction department operator or supervisor. This includes all areas surrounded by the concrete vapor wall or fencing. As mentioned before, there are special requirements for the extraction process area, including proper electrical classification. All electrical wiring, motors, portable electric devices, and tools must meet the proper rating as defined by the National Fire Protection Agency, or NFPA. The illustration shown here defines the areas around the extraction process and the required electrical classification, which is Class 1, Division 1, Group G. All portable electric devices that are approved for use in this area must have the Class 1, Division 1 rating listed on the device. Even during shutdown, where a majority of the system is purged, there are still boundaries of 25 feet around hexane or micella containing tanks, where this classification still exists. Along with properly rated electrical wiring and equipment, there are several other process safety devices and systems in use in extraction. These include computer-monitored process instruments, controls, and alarms. Automatic fire protection equipment. Snuffing steam fire protection. Portable fire extinguishers. Automatic hexane detectors. Fireproof construction materials. Portable hexane and atmospheric monitoring equipment. Accidental damage to any of these devices or systems must be reported immediately to Bunge. Although the extraction process is considered a high-hazard process, it is at its most stable state when it is in normal operations or completely shut down. Most maintenance work will take place during a planned shutdown, over a longer period of time when the process has been steam purged, or over a period of a day during a non-steam purged shutdown. During a steam purged shutdown, all hexane is pumped underground, and the equipment, piping, and vessels are all purged with steam to remove vapors. After this is done, and when the facility manager approves, hot work with a permit is allowed in the extraction area. This is the only time that hot work may be performed there. All other permit procedures still apply. If working in the extraction area during a steam purged shutdown and hexane vapor or liquid is discovered, all work, especially hot work, must be stopped and immediately reported to Bunge. During a non-steam purged shutdown, all product and hexane is emptied from equipment and vessels, but hexane vapors are still likely to be present. No unrated tools or hot work will be permitted. In an emergency shutdown situation caused by power outages or process upsets, contractors must leave the area immediately, unless granted permission to work by Bunge. During an emergency shutdown, the extraction process is in its most volatile state, so it is important to follow Bunge management instruction. Due to all the potential hazards in the extraction area that have been covered, several items are prohibited, as listed here. Please review carefully and ensure compliance with these material restrictions or requirements. Ammonia is used in the packaging department and is managed in many of the same ways hexane is in the extraction department. While main material hazards are different, that being largely physical corrosive risk and toxic health risk, many controls such as area gas monitors and alarm capabilities are the same. Please be sure to include Bunge management in any work planning and packaging to ensure any potential impact to these product and warehouse cooling systems is understood and managed appropriately. Hydrogen is used in the edible oil department for cooking oil batches. This material is very flammable, so much so that the static from a leak can be enough to ignite itself. These flames are extremely hot and burn clear, making detection very hard without a thermal camera, utilizing infrared. While flammable like hexane, hydrogen is different in that it is very light and will quickly dissipate up into the atmosphere. Please be sure to include Bunge management in any work planning in edible oil to ensure any potential impact to hydro processes are understood and managed appropriately. Grain dust can be a significant hazard, leading to flash fire, combustion, and even secondary explosions that can be devastating. Elevator and extraction milling activities can generate significant amounts of dust, and it must be effectively managed to prevent buildup and keep risk minimized. An important part of process safety management is management of change, or MOC. Any changes made in extraction, milling, elevator, hydro, or ammonia processes, equipment, or materials will require a formal review. This includes changes to equipment, like switching to a different motor, materials of construction, such as changing piping from carbon steel to stainless steel, or process changes, like adjusting alarm set points. The detailed review of management of change and pre-startup safety reviews will take place by a team to ensure safe design and implementation of the change. Nitrogen is commonly used at Bunge to create an inert blanket on the top of oil storage tanks to protect oil from oxygen, which promotes oil degradation. Additionally, nitrogen pressure is used to push oil to or from tanks, or out of transfer lines. Please be sure to consider this for any line break or vessel work, as nitrogen is an asphyxiant, replacing oxygen, and can be fatal if undetected or managed incorrectly. Acetic anhydride is utilized in refined oil in oil processing reactions. This has a pungent odor, much like a concentrated vinegar, which is this material's reacted byproduct. Because odors are irritating, there are escape respirators located throughout the second floor of refining to aid and provide breathing air in the event of a leak until able to exit the building. Any work on or around acetic anhydride lines or oil reactors should include refined oil department management in planning. Hydrogen peroxide is utilized in refined oil in oil processing reactions. This has a pungent odor and an oxidizer, which can fuel fires to much greater intensity. Additionally, this material is corrosive, with a pH of 3.5 and can lead to burns where skin or eyes are unprotected. Because odors are irritating, there are escape respirators located throughout the second floor of refining to aid and provide breathing air in the event of a leak until able to exit the building. Any work on or around hydrogen peroxide lines or oil reactors should include refined oil department management in planning. Several acids are used throughout the refining and edible oil departments. These are largely used and plumbed directly into process vessels, and exposure directly would be unanticipated. However, if your work in or on these lines or vessels where these are utilized, please involve department management to ensure cleaning prior to vessel entry or line breaking by process neutralizing and flushing. Caustic soda, or sodium hydroxide, NaOH, is a highly corrosive chemical commonly used for housekeeping purposes in edible oil and refined oil. Please be sure any work with caustic soda has the extra eye and face protection required with both goggles and face shields. Even low percentage mixtures are damaging. Caustic materials do not burn like acids do, so contact and initial flushing may feel adequate, but many times the material has not been buffered and is continuing to react and damage your skin. Be sure to report any caustic soda exposure and prior to beginning work, engage the department supervisors to effectively plan to mitigate these risks. With a facility as old as ours in Decatur, Indiana, we do have many places where asbestos is present. These have been signed to clearly identify known locations. If you suspect a material may be asbestos containing, please do not disturb it, but report it to department management so samples and status can be objectively defined. Hot work is considered any flame-containing, spark, or heat-producing activity. Please be sure all related activities are reviewed with department management prior to beginning work, as there are area and activity requirements to consider. These are largely captured in the required permit for this work, but the slide here outlines several of the basic requirements. This slide will give a brief overview of the additional permits used at Bunge and may be required for you to complete your work safely. Line break permits are used when first opening lines, pipes, or vessels where there is the potential for harm due to the contents such as high heat, being under pressure, and corrosive chemicals. The air blowdown permit is required when cleaning an area using compressed air. This permit will only be issued when equipment has been shut down. Electrical tool permits for the Class 1 and Class 2 areas are required when electrical tools may be intrinsically safe, but not meet the required ratings. A pneumatic tool permit is required when using pneumatic tools in the extraction area. Not all pneumatic tools may be used, so it's important to verify this with your Bunge contact. At the time of this material development, these permits all exist as separate forms, but there is a project to combine rated area tool permits, so please be aware this may change in 2025. Transitioning now to some general site information. This slide is an aerial view of the Decatur, Indiana campus. It is rather large, and if you have any trouble locating the right place to be or go, please do not hesitate to ask. Maps are available at the guard shack. In the event of fire, spill, medical, or any other emergency occurs, please work to initiate appropriate emergency action promptly. Locating someone with a radio, or if near a phone, reaching out to the guard where normally attended is the ideal first step. This helps us get a broader radio instruction out, faster than trying to call or yell for people, one at a time. Please be sure to define communications for higher risk work, where rescue or emergency potential is more likely to be needed at. Make sure any who may be called are aware of the work and involved in the rescue planning. Radios to assist with this are available with the guard, but are only signed out day by day. For larger projects, additional radios can be coordinated with your Bunge project contact. Muster points for evacuation are localized by department and shown here. Large signs are posted to assist. Be sure to know where these locations are prior to beginning work. Shelters for seeking cover are localized by department and shown here. Signs are posted on doors to these rooms or areas to identify them as shelter locations. Be sure to know where these locations are prior to beginning work. Whether an evacuation or shelter notice is advised, whether by Bunge radio or public warning siren or emergency responder, please follow directions and do not leave so you can be accounted for. It is especially important to respond the right way. These plans are written and implemented to get the response desired, not necessarily because of the cause. For example, if there is a security threat and we want people to seek shelter, we would call for a shelter response. Just because it may be a nice warm sunny day, do not assume the alarm is for a tornado, just because that is the most common cause for sheltering alarms. You might otherwise be exposing yourself. Please review and abide by these good manufacturing practices while working in edible oil, refined oil, or extraction departments. These practices are in place to protect food and feed from contamination that could harm consumers. Bunge strives to be a good steward of the environment and operate responsibly to minimize our impacts to the environment. As such, we expect all contractors we work with to operate in a similar way. By being conscious of our material usages and selecting the most efficient ways to change, update, and/or add new equipment or processes, we want everyone to help us keep our footprint as small as possible. Please do not hesitate to share any opportunities you recognize to further improve our environmental performance. Please be sure to minimize waste and energy usage for work you are conducting for us, to the extent possible. Personnel elevators are available in elevator and extraction department and are available for your use. We do expect these to be operated within rated capacities, and if you notice any damage or improper operation, that this be reported, so they can be removed from service until appropriate corrective action can be taken. Please be sure lighting and communication means are assured or tested before use. In the event the elevator stops between floors, you would need to be able to initiate a request for help. Although this rarely happens, if it were to occur, be patient and ensure you do not exit without the fall protection plan implemented. As you have surely seen and heard through this presentation, there have been many changes in the last year. Please carefully review this summary slide to ensure these expectations, whether via forms, permits, or practices, are complied with, and contact your Bunge project manager or safety department personnel with any questions. Although much of your work and communications will be through Bunge department managers or supervisors, here is contact information for safety program or requirement specific questions. This concludes your site-specific orientation required for the Bunge Decatur, Indiana plant. Additional requirements and/or those in this presentation may change as standards evolve. We look forward to partnering with you to complete safe work throughout 2025.